scripture reading is from the letter of James to the tribes in the dispersion. And I'll be reading from James 1:12 through 16. Blessed is the man who endures trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to all who love him. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my brother. Word of God for all people.
Thanks be to God.
Lived in downtown Ottawa, and he couldn't find a parking place. So he drove around a little bit, and finally he double parked, and he wrote on the windshield, "Forgive us our trespasses." When he came back, there was a ticket. And the policeman had written, I've been patrolling this area for 20 years. I've never disobeyed what I'm supposed to do in terms of giving out tickets at appropriate times. And and then he quoted scripture, lead us not into temptation. And wrapping up this week, our series that began quite a while ago on the Lord's Prayer, with those parts of the scripture where it says, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In the New Revised Standard Version, it probably has a more accurate translation of that than the King James did. It really means, lead us not into trials. Let us not be put to tests. Similar to like Abraham was tested when he was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac, and God then lifted up the lamb that saved his life, if you will. But it's the trials rather than the temptation that we normally think about, which entices us to do that which is wrong. You know, it's kind of like when you know you shouldn't have Dunkin' Donuts. You know you shouldn't. Darn it, if your only parking place there is on the street is right in front of Dunkin' Donuts. You know, obviously God wants you to have a donut, right? So you go and you buy one, and that looks really good, and it's not, and then then you've had a half a dozen donuts before you know it, and that's not good. That's not good. There's that type of temptation where we're enticed to do something, like the guy who was on a diet and he was doing really good, and then one morning in the office he had a bag of Krispy Kreme donuts. And somebody said, what happened? What happened? And he said, well, I was going by the store, and I said, Lord, if you want me to have a donut, give me a parking place. Said I drove around 8 times. And there it was. Well, there's trials, and then there's the deliverance from evil. And it means there it really should have before the word evil is the. Deliver us from the evil, or the evil one, or the demons, if you will. They're not comfortable saying Satan, but from the evil, the force that can make us do things that we know we shouldn't do. But somehow we end up doing it. And we see evil in so many different ways. The evil may, it may be as innocent as the attitude that anything goes. It doesn't matter what you do, anything goes. Judge not that you be judged. And you can do anything that you want. And we see that take roots in disastrous ways when persons feel they can use drugs without any consequences. A woman, bank clerk, retired from that because she had 3 children, an 8-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. She got them nicely dressed. It was a Saturday morning. She said, "You can watch the cartoons." Well, they went in to have the cartoons and watch the cartoons. She got out her cocaine and began to use it. And a few minutes later, she went in and strangled the 8-year-old and the 4-year-old. And the 2-year-old survived barely. Just because. Evil happens in different ways. It happens when we categorize people. When we say blacks are bad, or the police is bad, or whoever is bad, the Muslims bad. When we put everybody into the same bag, it's so easy when someone crosses you from one of those areas to lump everybody together. So Black Lives Matter, but Blue Lives Matter. And Yellow Lives Matter. All lives matter in God's eyes. But how easy it is when we have the attitude or driven by evil forces, if you will. We do terrible things. Not one police officer has ever been jailed for any black crime against black people in this country. And videotapes are there. That doesn't justify the shootings of police. But it's what allows somebody to be able to walk into a mosque and kill 40 Muslims at worship. Or someone able to take a gun and look down at hostages from another country and shoot them in the head on television. Deliver us from evil is a legitimate prayer, isn't it? And deliver us from another thing, stupidity. A man, an author, William Burroughs was his name, convinced his wife that he would be able to shoot the apple off her head like William Tell. He was a drug addict. He missed, and she was dead. Stupidity. story of the chauffeur, of the industrial man who was hiring a chauffeur. And he lived right near a cliff road. So he had the applicants come in. He asked the first guy, he said, how close could you drive to the edge of that cliff and keep me safe? He said, I could drive within a foot of that edge. Okay, the next guy, he said, how close could you drive? And Wally said, I could drive you 6 inches from that edge. The next guy came in, and he said, how close would you drive to that edge? And he said, I want to drive within 12 feet of that edge. And the industrial said, you're the guy I want as my chauffeur. Stupidity would drive that close. Deliver us from evil. Lead us not into trials, Lord. Lead us not into those situations where we can't handle it. Don't give us more than what we can handle. And there are different times in our lives when we can handle some things, and then we can't at another time. And that's part of maturing, and that's part of God's guiding us. In the book of James, it says, God will never tempt us. God does not tempt us. We may say, well, God made me do that. Like the woman who burned her children in the oven from Maine many years ago because she said, God told me to do that. God would never tempt us to hurt another person. Never. Never. God does not tempt us to do evil. That's what James says. I don't have to be an NRA member. And all of you could be, may not be, but sometimes the arguments that are used in terms of what can guide us in the use of guns seem so lopsided. I wonder, I was speculating this week, thinking about all the assault weapons out there. How this one guy who killed the policeman really had an arsenal. The next step. But I wonder if the NRA would say, if I were to propose, that every person in the United States receive an assault weapon. I wonder if they would agree with that. I'm guessing they wouldn't. And then I would ask them, why wouldn't you give assault weapons to everybody? The mentally ill? The person who hates other people? All that. And if not, what restrictions? How would you restrict? It would be interesting. God says, lead us not into, Jesus says, lead us not into the time of trials, to temptations. Deliver us from evil. There's a Middleton man, but you may have read it. He's a 72-year-old cab driver who every weekend goes down to Boston and drives cab. Has driven cab for 50 years. He lives with his girlfriend, a longtime girlfriend. And he goes into Boston on a regular basis to earn some extra money. A while back, he returned a backpack which had $187,000 in it. It belonged to a homeless man who had just received it as an inheritance and had left it in his cab. The homeless man asked him to went in and never came back out. So he got in touch with the police, and the police were able to locate the person. There was a receipt and everything, so the $187,000 got returned to the guy. His friend said, "You should take some of the money and keep it for yourself." And he didn't. And at other times in his cab, he has returned $10,000 to somebody who had left it in the car. Cell phones, wallets, etc., etc. Very kind, compassionate person. In fact, he's one of the few cab drivers in Boston that will pick up homeless people and give them a ride. And when one homeless man had died, he had left the request to have Raymond McCoskey come to his funeral because he meant so much. What a contrast, huh? Between a life like that. And I mean, that's a lot of temptation. I wouldn't try me if I was you. But it's a lot of temptation. But his life is so centered on one thing: the value of other people. Maybe share that.